Tonight, at some point, you're going to lie in the dark and remember something you did. Maybe it was last week. Maybe it was 11 years ago. You're going to hear yourself say something stupid at a party, or see the exact expression on someone's face the moment you got something badly wrong, or relive the specific silence after a joke that landed on no one. And your body is going to respond as if it's happening right now. Your chest will tighten. Your jaw will clench. You might even flinch, physically flinch, at a memory of an event that has no consequences anymore, that caused no lasting damage, that the other person almost certainly doesn't remember. You're not broken. You're not anxious. You're not failing at sleep. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. And the reason why changes everything you think you know about memory, identity, and what your mind is actually for. Psychologists have a name for this phenomenon. They call it involuntary autobiographical memory. But that clinical phrase doesn't come close to capturing what it actually feels like at 3 a.m. when your brain decides that right now, in the dark, in the quiet, when you have nowhere to go, is the perfect time to replay the most humiliating moment of 2014. So why does it do this? And why always at night? The answer starts somewhere most people would never think to look. It starts with a discovery about memory that researchers didn't make until 1994, when a neurologist named Antonio Damasio published a book that quietly rearranged how science understood the human mind. Damasio had spent years working with patients who had suffered damage to a specific region of the brain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. These were not people who had lost intelligence. They could reason, solve problems, hold conversations, pass every cognitive test you put in front of them, but they couldn't make decisions, not simple ones, not which cereal to buy, not which day to schedule an appointment. They would sit for hours, listing options, analyzing outcomes, unable to choose. Damasio's conclusion was radical. Emotion is not the enemy of rational thinking. Emotion is the engine of it. The brain doesn't file memories as neutral information. It files them as experiences, tagged with the precise physical sensations they produced. The racing heart, the heat in your face, the drop in your stomach. When you try to retrieve a memory, you don't just get the information. You get the body state that came with it. This is called the somatic marker hypothesis, and it means that every embarrassing memory isn't stored like a photograph. It's stored like a full body recording. The moment you access it, the physical experience begins again. But that still doesn't explain the 3 a.m. part. For that, you need to understand something about what your brain is actually doing while you're trying to sleep. In 2010, a team of researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, published a study in the journal Current Biology. They were investigating a phenomenon they called targeted memory reactivation during sleep. Specifically during REM sleep, the brain doesn't go quiet. It goes to work. Every day, your hippocampus collects an enormous volume of raw experience. Most of it is trivial. The face of a stranger on a commute, the temperature of the coffee you drank at 9 a.m., background noise, but some of it carries a charge. While you're awake, your prefrontal cortex, the rational, executive part of your brain, acts as a kind of gatekeeper. It suppresses emotional responses when they're not useful. It keeps you functional. It stops you from breaking down in a grocery store over something that happened in 2009. But at night, that gatekeeper goes offline. During sleep, the prefrontal cortex dramatically reduces its activity. The hippocampus, freed from executive oversight, begins sorting through the day's experiences and flagging the ones with the strongest emotional charge for deeper processing. This is not insomnia. This is consolidation. This is your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. The problem is what happens when the processing fails to complete, because not every emotionally charged memory gets resolved. Some of them cycle. The hippocampus flags them for review. The prefrontal cortex isn't there to regulate the response, and the memory plays with full physical sensation in the dark, over and over, without the dampening effect that would be there during the day. This is why the embarrassment feels worse at 3 a.m. It's not your imagination. The regulatory system is genuinely turned down. But here's where it gets stranger. In 2013, psychologist Peggy St. Jacques, Duke University, published research on a phenomenon called memory reconsolidation. Every time you recall a memory, you are not simply playing it back, you are reconstructing it. And in that moment of reconstruction, the memory becomes briefly unstable, open to revision, open to distortion, open to intensification. When you replay an embarrassing moment in the dark and feel your body flood with shame, you are not just remembering what happened, you are rewriting it slightly, layering new emotional weight on top of the original, strengthening the neural pathway, making it easier to access next time. Every time you lie awake and cringe, you are making that memory stronger. This is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. Your brain is designed to learn from high emotion experiences by replaying them until the lesson is encoded. In an environment where social rejection could mean death, where being cast out of the group meant starvation, exposure, predation, the brain that obsessively reviewed social failures and burned them into long-term storage was the brain that survived. The tribe mattered. The hierarchy mattered. Getting it wrong mattered enormously. Your embarrassment response is not a personality weakness. It is the fine-tuned output of 300,000 years of social species evolution, running at full volume in a world where the stakes are almost never what your nervous system thinks they are. But there's one more layer to this, and it may be the strangest part of all. In 2019, researchers at the University of Toronto have a study examining why certain memories feel more viscerally shameful in memory than they did in the original experience. What they found was something called the observer effect in autobiographical recall. When you remember an embarrassing event, you don't usually see it from your own eyes. You see it from the outside. You watch yourself. You take a third-person perspective, standing a few feet away, watching the version of you who said the wrong thing, made the wrong face, misjudged a room. This perspective shift is not neutral. When you watch yourself from the outside, you are applying the judgment of an observer to your own behavior. You are doing to yourself what you imagine everyone in the room was doing to you in real time. And that observer is always harsher than reality. In 2002, psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky at Cornell ran a now famous experiment. They had students enter a room wearing an embarrassing t-shirt and estimate how many people in the room noticed. The students consistently overestimated by a factor of roughly 2. Gilovich called this the spotlight effect. We assume we are being watched far more closely than we are. We assume our failures are far more visible than they are. We assume the room remembers far longer than it does. The gap between how closely we believe we are observed and how closely we actually are is enormous. And your brain at 3 a.m. does not know this. It has no access to the data that would correct the error. It is running on raw, unregulated feeling, reconstructing a memory from the outside, in a body that has evolved to treat social failure as a survival threat. So here is what is actually happening when you lie in the dark and cringe. Your hippocampus is flagging an unresolved, high emotion experience for processing. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that would normally moderate the response, is offline. Your memory reconsolidation system is running a loop that strengthens the neural pathway every time you engage with it. Your recall is happening in third person, which applies observer-level judgment to your own behavior. And your spotlight effect is distorting the scale of the original event into something far larger than it ever was. None of this is pathological. All of it is ancient. Every human being who has ever lived went through this. Every person you've ever met has a version of this running inside them right now. None of this is pathological. The brain is not torturing you. It is trying to protect you. It is running its social calibration software in the only quiet window it has, the hours when the world goes dark and the gatekeeper steps away. The tragedy is not that the system exists. The tragedy is that it was built for a world where the stakes were genuinely that high. You are carrying hardware designed for survival, running it in a world where almost nothing you're afraid of can actually kill you. And at 3 a.m., in the dark, with no one watching, your ancient brain doesn't know the difference.